About how we are going to prepare ourselves for returning to work as driving instructors. Obviously, COVID-19 is presenting huge challenges to us in the industry that we're in, but hopefully today we can give you some ideas and procedures to help you return safely to work. First of all, on the screen, I'm going to put up a diagram that shows what the equivalent to the DIA in Europe has done. And you can see that down the middle of the chart in the blue, they're looking at things such as procedures, social distancing, hygiene, and information. And on the outskirts of that diagram, you can see the prior to theory test, and then after theory test. And again, on the right-hand side, about the practical test. So there are lots of things that we need to think about. So what we've done as a company, Drive Hart, we've put together some procedures, and we've included information, hygiene, distancing, insurance, risk, and contracts. But before we go on to that, I just want to pop a couple of sayings up onto the screen. And if I can read you the first one, if you think you're doing too much to prevent infection, you're definitely not doing enough. So throughout today's presentation, I want to bring you back to those thoughts. And the other one is, in handling any crisis, it is crucial to retain credibility. Giving false reassurance is the worst thing one can do. So if we can move on now to our first little bit of our diagram there, information. When we talk about information, we're talking about information to our pupils, our students, and the students' parents. We need to change the way we communicate with them. We need to change their expectations. So we need them to understand that things are going to be different. So one of those things that we'll be doing is before the lesson, the day before the lesson, we'll be phoning that pupil and asking them if they are well and if they're sharing a household with people who are well. Obviously, if they're sharing a household with anyone who has become unwell, the lesson would not proceed. And to back up that information before the lesson, when you meet them at the car, before they get into the car, you'd ask those questions again. Are they well? Has everyone in their household been well and healthy? And the other thing we can also do at that point is we can take their temperature with a non-contact thermometer. Clearly, an increased temperature would indicate no lesson to go ahead. What we also need to do is we need to protect ourselves. And by that, I mean, we've got to have clear procedures, policies and procedures. And we've also got to make records of those procedures. We can do all of the cleaning and follow all the procedures in the world. But if we're not recording that, it's not going to help us in the case that we might need it. So we've got to record that we have followed out all the procedures that I'm going to go to in a minute, because after all, we have a duty of care to our students. Okay, so let's just move on then. We're going to look at the hygiene section now. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the PPE that we expect the pupil to wear. So the pupil will hopefully, and we will talk to them about this beforehand, they will hopefully turn up wearing a mask such as this, or a slightly more advanced mask such as this. And we will also ask them to wear a face shield such as this. And they can buy one of these for about £18. So it's an investment really well worth making on their part. So that they can carry out with their driving lessons safely. And the other bit of PPE we would like them to wear is gloves. Sometimes there might be a pupil who's pretty generally reliable, but on that day they've forgotten their face shield, in which case we would have a spare one in the boot, which would be sanitized, so they could borrow that. But ideally, we don't want to be lending our face shield out all the time, but you would have to make individual decisions on that. So that's the PPE for our students. Now, we all know that if you are a spectacle wearer, wearing a face mask such as that can actually cause a little bit of difficulty with steaming up with your glasses. So it might be that they are not able to wear a mask. So let's move on to the instructors. What PPE would we wear? We'd talk about the same sort of stuff. So we'd be talking about wearing a face mask if possible. We'd be certainly wearing a face shield. We'd be wearing gloves. And there's also the possibility of a screen, and I'm looking into that at the moment. There is a company making screens that can go between the instructor and the pupil, but still allow us as instructors to reach through, to touch, to grab the steering wheel should we need to, and the gear stick and the handbrake. There has been some controversy about face shields, whether they would invalidate your insurance. But my insurance company that I phoned up said face shields didn't pose any problems at all. So let's move on to ventilation in the car. We want to make sure that we get as much fresh air in the car as possible. So therefore, windows open. Don't put the air conditioning on and use the inside recycle. So nice fresh air, windows open as much as possible. Then we move on to how we're going to disinfect the car. So we've got to make sure that we disinfect every single part of the car. We have to do that before and after each lesson. So that means with disinfectants such as this, or you can use bleach and water, 5 parts water, 1 part bleach, and you could even put it in a little squirty container such as this, and then you can use that to wipe down the interior of the car. So we need to have a process to make sure that we don't miss any bits, because it's very easy when perhaps you're in a little bit of a rush and you've done it 3-4 times that day to miss something, but this is crucial. We mustn't miss anything. So we've come up with something that all instructors will recognize as DHSSSM, followed by the new bit, which is GWIL. So we're looking at following this process with our cleaning procedures. So D for doors, that would be our handles inside and outside of the car. We would want to clean the handbrake thoroughly, make sure that we give it a good scrub down. We'd talk about cleaning the seat. Now this would be the seat in itself, as well as all the adjusters on the seat. We would be talking about the steering wheel and, of course, the adjusters and the seat belt. So we'd be looking at cleaning very thoroughly the clasp, the button, and any adjustments they may have made to their seat belt. Last of all, in the DHSSSM section would be mirrors. So we're looking at all the adjusters for the mirrors that they might have touched. So on to the new bit now. We need to make sure we disinfect the gear stick, the windows, if they have used the windows, but even if they haven't, which they should have done, because we want those windows open, don't forget. So clean up those window controls. Wipers, even if they haven't used them, I would recommend that you clean them, because somebody might have just touched them. Indicator stalks, we need definitely to clean those, and light switches, and last of all, our footwell, so our pedals and our mats. So let's just talk about the mats in the car. The best type of mats to have would be rubber or plastic, not material, because if you have any type of infection on the material, it would be difficult to clean off. So rubber mats would be much easier, rubber or plastic to spray down and wipe off. And also in terms of the seat coverings, well, I would recommend that you purchase, they're not very expensive, $3.99 I think, some plastic seat covers, because they are going to be much easier to wash down. So that's how we clean the inside of the car. Now we need to think about our clothing. So as you can see, today I'm wearing a set of scrubs. They're not particularly expensive, but they're nice and comfortable, and they're very easy at the end of the day to pop into the washing machine. So you can give them a good wash at the end of every day, buy 3 or 4 sets, and then you can just recycle them. Obviously, if you're wearing woolly jumpers and different types of clothes, they're going to be harder to wash. So that's what Drive Hart are doing. We're all investing in a few sets of scrubs, and they're nice and comfortable. If you're chilly, you can put some layers on underneath. So that's nice and easy. Let's move on to footwear. So many people don't know, but the virus can be carried on the soles of your feet. So what we're doing with our footwear is we're purchasing rubber shoes, such as those that they wear in theatres in hospital. So again, they're very easy to clean down. And the other procedure that we're using as well, as and when possible, is we're using a foot bath, which is a big saucer. You can purchase them for the local garden centre. And again, we're popping in there 5 parts water, 1 part bleach. And again, so when you come home at night, it's a good idea, as we used to do with foot and mouth, to walk through that foot bath. So those plastic trays are very cheap and easy to get. Okay, so there's our clothing. So let's think about your working day. We're undoubtedly going to have some sort of comfort break. So if you pop into the local petrol station, you might want a comfort break. You might want to grab your sandwich in there. But when you come out of there, think about everything as having COVID on it. If you get a little bit, people could say paranoid, you're more likely to be safe. So you're going to ditch your sandwich wrapper and enjoy the sandwich. But make sure that you wipe down. Make sure you use lots of hand gel. Make sure that if you're wearing gloves that you change them regularly. So keep yourself really safe when you come out of these places where there's lots of people and lots of potential contamination. So when you get home, as I say, you're going to put your scrubs into the washing machine. A good process is to try and make sure that you can do this independently. And by that, I mean, don't engage the rest of your family in helping you do the washing. Do it yourself so nobody else has to touch the clothes that you have been wearing all day. And again, when you get home, a really good thorough clean down of your car. So it's a good deep clean at night. We've talked about seat covers and we've talked about mats as well. The other thing we want to do is make sure that when your pupils come to the car, you try and encourage them not to bring any baggage. I know sometimes that's impossible to come empty-handed because maybe you're picking them up from school and you're dropping them off at home. They're obviously going to have some schoolwork and some school bags. If they do, a roll of black plastic sacks in your boot would be useful. Hand them a sack, let them put their bag in it. Into the boot it goes, and then they take that bag away with them. So that's nice and easy to do. If they have mobile phones or things such as that, then again, a small sandwich bag might be useful just to pop those mobile phones into there. Okay. And again, anything that if they can bring nothing into the car, it's going to be much, much better. So let's talk about during the lesson. We very often share training materials. We might pass them the pen to do on a write-on wipe-off board or a magnetic board. Again, it's better if we can keep everything to ourselves. So maybe use demonstrations yourself rather than sharing those materials. Not ideal, perhaps. We like to let them get involved in that way, but in this situation, it's going to be safer not to share materials in the car. And the other thing that we're doing at Drive Hart is, at the moment, we have paper records as driver records, which also link into our software. We're going to do away with the paper records because we don't think having paper records handing back and forth to each other is going to be a good idea. So we're going to ditch the paper records and go mainly or completely onto our software. And at Drive Hart, we use the software called My Drive Time. So all of the student records will be kept on there and the students will have access to them. So that will be a good system. So all of these procedures, I have tried it. I tried it for about a week and a half, 2 weeks before lockdown. And I have to be honest, it took time. It was a little bit of a pain, but it's something we have to do. So in order to get it done properly, you don't want to have to rush it. So you need to factor in 10 to 15 minutes between lessons to get your cleaning procedure done. Okay. We're obviously doing the cleaning procedure to eliminate any virus contamination in the car. So if you've got a half an hour break between lessons, I'd recommend you increase that by about 10 to 15 minutes to give yourself time to do it. We know that if we're rushing a task, we're going to skip it. And, if you become complacent with this, that is the time that you are going to be in most trouble, and your pupils are also. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the social distancing part, which is the second part of our sheet. Third part there. So we've talked about hygiene. So let's talk about social distancing. We know that in the car, we cannot stay 2 meters apart. So when we're in the car, we will employ all those hygiene procedures that we've just talked about. There are times when you're instructing that you may not be in the car. So, for example, when you're doing some under the bonnet checks, checking out the tyres, looking at the lights at the back of the car. Maybe you're standing watching a traffic flow system at a complex roundabout. Maybe you're having a comfort break. Maybe you're at the test centre. It goes without saying, all of those times, make sure you keep your social distancing. Don't cut corners with that. So now we're going to talk about public liability and public indemnity. Now, I phoned my insurance company and I asked them where I stood with my public liability if someone were to sue me for COVID. So somebody gets sick with COVID, they say, I definitely got it from my driving instructor. The first thing my insurance company said to me was, it's going to be very difficult to prove that they actually got COVID from you. But what's really, really important is that you have your procedures in place and that you record when you have undertaken your cleaning. So every time you've undertaken your cleaning, you need to make a note of it in whatever software you use, and it's logged against that pupil at that time on that day. So should it go to court, and I think it's highly unlikely, you've got really good evidence to show that your procedures were second to none and you have kept your car really clean. And I think in that case, you'd be very unlikely to have any trouble if you did go to court. I also asked my insurance company about face shields. As I mentioned earlier, they had no trouble with wearing face shields in the car. In fact, a lot of people think it's actually safer wearing face shields than glasses, because if the airbags go off, if you've got glasses, potentially you could have some trouble. But face shields are absolutely fine. So let's have a look at our student contracts. We at Drive Hart are changing our contracts. We're, sorry, canine interruption there. We're changing our contracts to reflect the new procedures. So we're saying this is what we expect of our students, and this is what our students can expect of us. So we have a whole new set of rules. And as I say, we're going to pop those into our contracts and get each student to sign to say that they understand and agree with those new processes and procedures. And it's really important that we do this because we're now bringing on board the parents and the students with us. So let's move on now to finally sort of summarize everything we've said. We've got to be alert. We have to act positively, consistently, and thoroughly. We have a duty of care to us, as I said, and we also have a duty of care to our students. In summary, keep it tight, be thorough and rigorous with your cleaning. Make sure you don't cut corners. And if anyone has any questions, we'll be happy to answer any questions through a Q&A on this system. Just post your questions to us and we'll be delighted to take your questions and answer them. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for watching and keep safe. Thank you.